were forbidden to say. The fatally demolished vehicle was the property of Paul McCartney. He and a female passenger was dead. He had acquired the Aston Martin DB6 only 6 months before. Now, Paul and his car were no more. The news was sensational. It would have sold many papers and could have been the reporter's career-making story. Papers live for such stories that do not come along often. Samuel sensed it. Unable to dissuade him, an officer referred the reporter to Brian Epstein. Brian was packing when Samuel called and agreed to meet in person. Brian said Paul was on holiday. Samuel persisted. Brian said that he and an associate would be driving to Paris in the same car that Samuel was then claiming was destroyed. "Well, that's impossible," Samuel said. "I've seen the vehicle, it's demolished." "Enough of what you think you saw," Brian said. "I spoke to Paul this morning 2 hours before he left for Paris. Hold your story for a week or two until he gets back, or you and your paper will be the laughingstock of Great Britain." "I would be the laughingstock if I didn't print it." The meeting went on and on. But the determined reporter was not convinced. Brian tried to appeal to his sympathies by explaining that the Beatles had just returned from their exhausting American tour and that they all needed a break from the public eye. Without admitting anything at all about Paul's tragedy, Brian explained that their peace was worth considerable compensation and that McCartney in particular needed... Without admitting anything at all about Paul's tragedy, Brian explained that their peace was worth considerable compensation and that McCartney in particular needed a long break before another press conference. When nothing else worked, Brian gave an ultimatum. Samuel could either take a cruise and a large payment to drop the story or spend years in court in an expensive libel suit. Brian said, "Even if you're right, you'll lose. We have a lot more resources than you do." When that threat failed, Brian called a persuasive Tavistock agent who gave encouragement to Sam over the phone. Sam agreed. Brian drafted a deal edited by Rex Macon, who negotiated with Samuel until it was signed. Then Samuel's payment and travel arrangements had to be made. By the time Brian left for Hamburg, he was 9 hours behind schedule. Mal Evans agreed to let John know to change their 1 o'clock meeting to 10 o'clock and swore Brian would never hear from Sam again. Although Mal swore he sent John a telegram in the morning, John had not received it. While it's not for me to say who dropped the ball, I will say that John not receiving that notice of Brian's long delay was a horrible torment to him. Although Mal was a good friend of Brian, of the band, of everyone close to them, John's anguish of not getting that telegram created a real rift that nearly destroyed their friendship and almost cost Mal his job. Still,